So here we have another demonstration about letting go of detail. It's so important if you want to paint loose watercolours and create some very magical paintings. It can happen, doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And it's about getting things in the right place, but be willing to let watercolour do a little bit for you. So this is what we're going to do on this demo. So let's give it a go. Let's have a quick little look at the reference image here. There's a difficult drawing in there. There's a lot of perspective. But use the traceable if you don't feel comfortable doing it freehand, or use some kind of measuring tool to get the perspective right. And I haven't drawn everything. I've drawn the areas I know I would struggle with, perhaps getting the perspective lines all in the right place, the heights of the figures and so on. So I've made it a little bit easier for myself. But I'm going to lose a lot of this detail. For me, I just want to capture the sense of light and atmosphere here, the misty effects. So I'll make sure I go almost white of the paper here, so we get that strong dark against light. Suggestion of the figures, try and leave some white paper for the highlights, the little sort of rim lighting, but if I have to use a bit of gouache, so be it. And then the rest of it is quite loose really, you know, suggest some of this architectural detail. So this is a photograph of Aberystwyth train station mixed on Mid-Journey with one of my watercolour paintings. So obviously it's probably not Aberystwyth train station, but it's going to serve for a good demonstration, hopefully. Where the white of the paper is going to be, let's just make that area wet. And the reason for that is I'll paint up to it, to about here, and then I'll keep the white paper, but there'll be a soft transition of the light and the dark. So a little bit of water down here with that mist, or the smoke probably, isn't it? Smoke from the train station. So we'll see how we get on. So let's go for some blue, ultramarine blue with perhaps a touch of lavender maybe. So a bit more lavender, I think. And then some yellow ochre. So where I've got some dry paper there, that will give me a hard edge in there. And then where it touches the damp paper here, we'll get a soft edge. So we're just looking at recreating that sort of cloud there. And then I'll just pull that across there, and that lavender and yellow ochre will mix and create a grey, which probably would suit the smoky sky. Just pull that into there, just let it carry on mixing on the paper. Not to fuss with it too much. So I'll go with that. I shall switch to my Skoda Perla size 12, and with that blue mix, I'll grey it off a little bit with that yellow, and pull that across here, leaving little bits of white paper. It could be figures, bits of sparkle, and so on. And then as I pull that across, it's gonna hit the wet paper, which will give me a soft edge. Paint up to that train, so I can have a little highlight on the top of the train, and pull that underneath there. So the only way to paint a scene like this is to just ignore all that detail, and have a bit of a drawing there that will help you out to paint or to know where things are, but you do just have to really let go of all that detail. That smokiness in there. And a scene like this, you've almost got to feel your way through the scene paint the light areas first and the effects that are soft edges and so on. We're doing the light areas first, so a lot of that's going to be darker, but I'm leaving lots of white paper behind because we want the sense of light. If you could do me a big favour and hit that like button, it'll really help the video get shown to more watercolour artists and hopefully help a few people to gain confidence in painting in this loose style. And don't forget to check that you've subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any videos. And take a look at the link in the description if you want to look at my membership on my website, where there's lots of videos, the traceables to download, etc., and the reference images. So let's get on with the video. Thanks for watching. Let's go for it. So some more ultramarine blue into that mix. Add some more lavender, bit of yellow. That's hands of yellow, I think. Just to grey that off. So it can be a little bit stronger in the paint here. I'm just leaving a little bit of a white gap there in the paper, which is the highlight on the road, not road, the tracks. Bit of red into there, which is perhaps some reflected light off of that track. So I did draw those tracks in, so I know to leave those white of the paper. And try not to get them too perfect, because that's the key. If you get everything perfect, it has to be perfect. Whereas if you get some things, you know, not quite right, it becomes, you know, a loose painting and you can get away with a lot of it. But if you try and be too detailed, it's got to be right. Yeah, that makes sense. Back to that grey. And while this is all damp, I shall get some neutral tint. To get my darks, bit of blue. I think I need to get some more paint out. And if I put that strong dark in while that's damp, a bit of soft edge, and then there's a shadow underneath those train tracks. And I'll probably use a bit of gouache up there. Lift a little bit of paint off, but just don't mess about with it too much. Just a little bit of smoke off of there maybe. So while I'm waiting for this side to dry, because I now need dry paper here, I can work on this side. So I just need a yellow, a grey yellow. So there's a lot of muted colours in here. Light coming through that glass, whatever it is, there to stop everyone getting wet. So if we take this as Aberystwyth, it does get a bit of rain occasionally. It's in Wales and the UK. So it's not an easy scene, this, so don't be too hard on yourself if you struggle with it. It requires a bit of confidence, but a lot of that confidence will come from letting go of detail and just accepting, you know, you're going to paint things wrong and so on. Is that dried now? Yeah, that's dried. So there's my strong contrast in there. We've got dry paper there that gives me a nice strong dark. Add a bit of neutral tint into that as well, just to really increase it. Made a mistake there, but like I say, just embrace these mistakes. Don't let it put you off your painting. It is what it is. I've got a fairly accurate drawing there, but I'm losing the drawing as I'm painting here. But I've got an idea where these lines need to go. And again, don't make them too perfect. Break that line up so it stops, starts, longer, shorter. And mess a little bit of it up. Too much light coming through there. And back with the red over this side. So we've got these uprights. There's so much detail on here that I'm lost. So I'm just going to make sure I've got uprights, some curvy bits. Break that colour up a little bit. A bit of something dark in there. And as long as I paint it all wet into wet, it'll all just melt into everything. I don't get too fixated on the detail. On those figures. And then we just have a suggestion of detail. So for instance, a little flick there and so on, and when it's dried I can put a bit more detail there maybe. A bit of blue and yellow, a bit of that red, give me a grey. I want to connect the floor here to what's going on above. Just a bit of water, a bit of that red because it's perhaps reflecting that colour there. Pull it up into there to connect it up. So a lot of wet into wet stuff going on here. A bit darker under there. So I've lost a lot of the detail I perhaps intentionally wanted to put in, but I know if I get sort of fixated with that and start worrying about it, it's going to be a problem. Maybe I can lift out a little bit here and there, put it back in. But probably what's more important is to connect these figures up to this area here. So I shall crack on with that. I'm just going to paint them as silhouettes. There's not a lot of light underneath here. Person there. This one with a slightly blue jacket on. Strong dark paint. But we'll have this one coming towards us. He's just arrived or just got off the train. Figures off in the distance. There's one there, but this is really thick, strong paint. Some luggage, red suitcases. Perhaps I'll have that one with a red suitcase. This other guy, we'll give him a blue one. Odd if we have two suitcases the same. A few darks in there to anchor it all down. So just take some of this yellow ochre. As long as I keep the little highlights around the figures, a little bit of sparkle, it should be okay. While the paper's damp like this, we can keep working until we get things right. I think we need to just pull some of that across here. And we can suggest the detail there maybe. I'll dry that off. What a mess. It looks great. I'm quite happy with that. So let's have a go with the station over the other side. So it's a little bit further away, so perhaps a little bit lighter in value. Just wash that off a little bit. Too dark in value, so I just use a bit of water just to wash that off, and it perhaps just disappears in that smoke. Mix those two together. So I know I'm painting fairly quickly, and this probably will be fairly difficult to follow along with what I'm doing here, but there is no choice but to paint quickly when you're doing, I think, scenes like this. And you'll find the more you paint, the more confident you get, and then you will find yourself painting quickly. And that's when you really free up, and but a lot of it is, letting go, not worrying about being too perfect. None of this is correct what I'm doing here, even though I've got my drawing there. But I'm going to mess all this up in a moment and lose all that detail. So I'm just concentrating on what's important. I need a dark under there. It's all in shadow. Maybe just a little bit of detail. Again, that's a directional line. Fixes in there. Some yellow ochre. And there's 20-30 people in there, but I'm not going to paint them all because these are the figures that are important in the painting. I just need a suggestion of figures on the other side. So I'm just going to use water just to mess all that up, perhaps leave a little few highlights and so on, but I've got the option of a bit of gouache if need be. A bit more yellow ochre. I'll go more blue, I think, actually, in there, but make a bit of space. But again, I'm working quickly because, you know, the paper's drying. All of this needs to be done wet into wet. A little bit of paint across there. So we'll go with the train here. That will just continue doing its own thing, and it may well be a case that we can just leave that as it is, that you know, we might need to put any figures in. So that hands are yellow, that's all contaminated with other paint in there. That's perfect for that train. So we've got dry paper here. So zoom in a little bit. So the darker the train, or the front of the train, is the darkest yellow because it's in front of that sunlight. And then I can just use water, just to drag that across there, but keep the white of the paper for the sunlight on the top of the train. Maybe just a little touch of blue in there. Suggestion, it's all suggestion, you know, and that goes into the smoke, so I can just lose the train there. You know, these, in a way, these paintings are really difficult to do, but they're actually easier in the fact that there's no detail. You're not painting detail, so as long as you let go and just happy to let the washes run into each other and not worry about all that detail being there, it's actually easier. And sometimes it just won't work, you know, it'll just look a mess, and you just have to accept that, and that's just part and parcel of painting in this style. Dark there, frame around the windows. But we need to connect the train to the ground, so I just use just a damp brush to feather that along. I've got some of that red on there. Let's pull that on there. Again, you know, I've messed up where I wanted the white paper to be retained, but I'm just going to keep going because I know I'll just use a bit of gouache, it's fine. And probably quite a good idea to just suggest the other carriage behind in that, but you know, that could be enough. Get the perspective right. Just to suggest there is something there being towed behind. Windows. Yeah, just a bit of blue for the glass. And I'll just use a bit of water. And when you start adding water onto things, it will just create runbacks and things, and you know, just let those happen. I've got those lovely red lights or whatever. I think they're stoppers, aren't they? It's where the train connects to another one. It's a nice bit of red. needs to be slightly darker in tone. Okay, I'll let watercolor paint itself. So I think having a couple of figures on the other side will be good. So I'll use the head height there. So it's going to be roughly about. Again, don't make them too perfect. Let's grab a clean bit of tissue. They're all in the smoke. And maybe a right there. And so this is the stage where you could overwork it, so just be careful. So we could use these little highlights to put some dark areas next to those. These figures stand in here. I've lost my drawing, but that'd be quite good. But you can see that as long as it's accurate in the perspective, you don't have to paint them all. So it's just a bit of something in there to strengthen the contrast. Use my finger there to mess things up a little bit. And I don't need to have a solid line all the way up. We can break it up. I've lost my dark a little bit, so I'm just putting that back in. Right. White of the paper is great for creating a sense of light and so on, but if you have too much everywhere, nothing really stands out, or everything stands out. So I'm going to take away a bit of that white in areas. I think just a little bit of alizarin crimson. There's a lot of red in this train station, so I think that would unify the painting quite well if we just a gentle wash of red over there. You could actually even put it all over there, I think. And if I'm looking for things to do, it's probably a good indication that it's done. But, a few little bits of white gouache, there's some stones and whatever else in there, just to break that up, put in that track that I lost. Now, try to retain the white of the paper, but it's not the end of the world if you do lose it, because we can put it back in. Just add a bit of red into that white gouache there, and perhaps without trying to too clever, we'll go with some of that ornate stuff. But you do sacrifice losing the freshness, so not too much. Now that could be enough there. I think that worked really well, and it worked because I wasn't getting fiddly with the detail. But I did start with an accurate drawing, not accurate as in I drew every little bit of detail. I drew that line in straight, or no, I drew that line in the correct angle. I drew these lines in the correct angle, and so on, and with the heights of the figure, and sort of drew the head and the shoulders. I haven't painted legs and so on, and I let watercolor do its thing. You know, and by that I mean areas were just running into other areas, mixing on the paper, run backs, cauliflowers, all sorts going on in here. You know, left sparkle, so the wash is behind, and it all adds to the scene. It's got a sense of light. It's got movement on these figures because we've got all these lovely things going on with the washes and so on, which I'll show in the close-ups at the end of the video. And you know, with this sort of atmosphere effect here, even makes you feel that the train is moving coming into the scene. Well, it does me anyway. So if you have an accurate photograph of a train station that's nearby you, you know, you could paint it in the exact same manner as this. You know, this is just a you know, really good reference image for doing a demonstration. So it's a good way to practice watercolor, and you know, a nice painting at the end of it. So good luck if you decide to give it a go. It's not easy, so don't be too hard on yourself if you struggle with it. But you know, just try and let go of detail. And I haven't painted any detail here. All I've got are some strong, dark against light shapes that look like figures. And they look like figures because we've got a small dot on a body. Yeah, that's all there is, and they've all just melted into each other. It's at a train station, so what are these? These are going to be luggage, you know, straightforward. We've used the white of the paper to create that sense of light. We've got soft edges off in the distance that create the atmosphere. All of these little bits of white paper left behind, and if I painted this again, it would be different, guaranteed, and your painting will be different. So it's just watercolor the way it goes, but no, it's come out well, so pleased with that one. So there you go, until next time, bye for now. So there you go, hopefully you enjoyed that. Please do hit the like and subscribe. Check out the links in the description and watch this video next if you enjoyed this one, because you're going to love this one.